Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Perceptive Podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I'm, of course, Josh Bycer, and we have another discussion about game design tonight. My guest is the lead designer and owner of Phantom Compass, an indie studio that has made games like Rulers of the Realm, which was kind of like a pinball meets RPG or a puzzle style game. But his current game is Triversal. It is a casual puzzle game. For those of you listening or watching this right now, we did play this for our Wednesday night stream. And he is here to talk a little bit about the design as well as his studio. So please welcome to the cast, Tony Walsh.
Hey, thanks, Josh.
Hey Tony, it is a pleasure to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's Friday. I'm super stoked for the weekend.
Mm-hmm. For me, weekend just means more work and more editing of
Oh
videos.
no.
It's the endless work week.
Yeah, I hear you.
So it's great to have you on. So I know we are kind of limited in time. There's certainly a lot to discuss. So to get things started, for people listening to us who don't know who you are or your studio, could you give us a little bit about your background and what is Triversal as well?
Sure. Well, so I am Tony. I run Phantom Compass. We're a small studio in the Toronto area up here in Canada. As far as my background goes, I actually come to the games industry from the creative side. I have a background in tabletop gaming as a youngster and arcade gaming back in the 1980s. And actually, those kids in Stranger Things, I was that age in the 80s, so that's how old I am. But anyway, so I come to pinball arcade gaming, digital video gaming, tabletop gaming, all that stuff. That was a way for me to figure out I had a lifelong love of video games. It took a long road for me actually to get there. My professional background was mostly in illustration. That got me into digital illustration and digital media, and then interactive digital media, and then web stuff, and then kids video game stuff. And I've been at it for about 25 years now. And the studio's been around for it'll be almost 14 years at the end of this year. So we make some original consumer games, and we do work for other studios from time to time. As far as Triversal goes, it's our first sort of spatial logic puzzle game that we've produced. We just launched it I guess this month, a couple weeks ago on Steam. It's hopefully going to be coming to at least one console and most likely mobile as well, although that's to be announced. Basically, it's a easy to learn, difficult to master, snackable puzzle game. So it's the kind of thing that we expect you to sit down and play in short sessions to chill out and relax. It's got a super laid back style, nice ambient soundtrack. And the gameplay isn't exactly like this, but I find it the same kind of flow that you get into like popping bubble wrap or knitting or whatever.
Great. So you said that your studio's been around for at least like 14 years now, and that's always been interesting when I talk to developers, especially those who are like on the smaller side, about being in the industry for so long. I mean, for people listening, like we joke about how things change like almost like month to month these days, let alone in over a decade. I guess my next question for you is like from where you've been sitting. What has it been like developing games in the space for now over a decade?
Yeah, it's always change. There's always changing factors in the industry that affect business, affect the kinds of games that are produced. We started off as a Flash studio because that was the predominant interactive tech at the time. And we worked with that up until around 2011, 2012, where we then transitioned to Unity. So technology constantly changes. When we started the studio, it was, I guess, just before smartphones like really hit the market, the iPhone and all that stuff. So we've seen tons of changes in every aspect, really. The free-to-play model becoming prevalent, all of those sorts of changes, and then trying to find ways to find a good space for ourselves in there. When Flash went away, that was a whole set of clients that we would do games for that were no longer doing those kinds of games. And so we then switched to working primarily with other developers who had Unity projects on the go. Yeah, so there's always something weird and wonderful happening. Definitely a vastly different marketplace today than it was when we started the studio. We came in with our first consumer game, which was Rollers of the Realm, the pinball RPG, just as the indie market started to shift into that kind of indie apocalypse mindset. So we sort of missed the good window that was there for 2 or 3 years. But somehow we've managed to keep the ship going.
Yep. And definitely been very tricky, I think, for a lot of indie developers, especially those who have been like not exactly like having like those massive hits, but still like experimenting with like new designs and stuff. And like, I just want to ask, like, with Rollers of the Realm, I know we're going to probably spend bulk of our time talking about Triversal, but I just want to touch on that for a few minutes, as we really don't see. Like, I'm a huge fan of pinball, and I've always been interested in games that have experimented with that kind of design. So I just wanted to ask you, like, where did that concept come from? Like, what gave you the inspiration to kind of, try to add more gameplay elements to pinball?
Yeah, that was our first big project as a studio. We had worked on much smaller games previously, and when we decided to do Rollers of the Realm, it was in collaboration with about a dozen or so new team members from AAA who had all been laid off. And we decided that we would bring our own indie sensibilities of getting small games done fast, and they would bring their AAA sensibilities of high production values, and we would kind of smash that all together. And we thought, well, what's a game that we could reasonably do together in a short period of time? And we thought, well, if it's going to be character driven, it's got to be an awfully simple character. Otherwise, we'll get bogged down in tons of art production. And so we came up with, well, why don't we do something with ball physics? And then we just kind of went into pinball. Now, I'd say the closest relatives to Rollers of the Realm are classic games like Pinball Quest or Devil's Crush, and maybe even slightly more recent than those ones, like Wizorb. If you remember that game, it was kind of like Breakout RPG. So you can Google that one, but that's sort of in the same vein. It's like cool ball physics. And then, of course, we released our game, and there were some other games that came out around that same time as well. What is the one? Yuki's Island Express?
Oh,
is
yeah.
Or Yoshi's? I don't know.
Yuki,
get the name
I
wrong.
think.
Yeah. And today there's a cool one called Peglin, which is like little kind of Peggle characters, Peggle RPG. So it's like, people like the simplicity of the ball physics games. And then if you can bring some cool twists on it, in our case, we brought RPG action combat and character progression and made the pinballs into playable characters. They still look like pinballs, but they have different stats and abilities.
Yeah, and it's always been, again, when we talk about kind of experimenting with, like, one of the advantages of being an indie developer, and with like kind of the games that you've made, one question I always like to ask developers, especially like when they've been around for so long, is, do you have like a particular philosophy or style of game that you like to make? Because if we look at Rollers of the Realm to Triversal, they're two very vastly different designs.
Sure, and in 2017 we launched a multiplayer car combat game, so it also stands alone in that library. I think because of where we get our funding from to make video games, there's been a heavy emphasis here on innovation. In Canada, there's different ways for us to access funds to produce games, and the focus of those funds is usually innovation. And so we're trying to find interesting twists on things and bring them into pitch to get funded. And that certainly was a big factor for Rollers of the Realm. For Triversal, it's a unique puzzle mechanic as far as we know. I'm not familiar with any game that's really like its core mechanic. Somebody described it as kind of a reverse cut the rope, and that might be the closest comparison. But, we make games that are not mainstream. Although, that being said, it's been over a dozen years of us making not mainstream games. We've never had a breakout hit. So it might be time to, get a game out there that's just people shooting each other in the face. Those seem to do much better.
Yeah, and it's something that I spoke with. I don't know if you heard of Jake Burgett of Grey Alien.
Yep.
Yeah, we've had discussions too about that kind of challenge of not of being an indie developer who's doing good enough to keep going, but you're not the next Stardew Valley or the next Undertale or those breakout successes, and it is a very hard market. I think it's harder than a lot of people realize when it comes to getting in the indie space and just being able to survive and thrive in it.
Yeah, I mean, most of the press focuses on the success stories, and nobody likes to hear, failure stories. Or, I mean, I think some other developers do. People who make games appreciate the postmortems and stuff like that. But yeah, man, I mean, we know we've released a bunch of a handful of consumer games, and some we didn't ship because we knew that they weren't even going to sell. Yeah, it's a really, really tough market. So what we hope is that, we just keep doing a good job, and one of these days we'll have something that takes off. But that's also why we run our services division, because, really that's one of our primary income sources, is doing good work for other teams. And if it was only original video games that we were trying to live on, I don't know how anybody does that except the fluke hits, or not fluke hits, but it's like you always have to have a good game, and then there's a dash of luck thrown in there as well, for sure.
Oh yes, definitely, and I've definitely have seen that over the last 10 years of interviewing developers and just like what it's like to survive in this space.
Yeah, it's hit driven. And I mean, sci-fi author Bruce Sterling has this great expression. He says, whatever happens to musicians will happen to everyone. And, you see how many struggling bands there are out there. And in a lot of ways, most indie developers are just like another struggling band, hoping to get signed on a major label. So,
yep.
It's really a lifestyle business. If you're getting into it to make money, your chances are pretty low.
Yep, unfortunately, it's something that I talk with a lot of students, and I give like talks at libraries on the very same topic, and it is something for people to consider. So, with Phantom Compass, and with kind of developing Triversal, World of the Realm, and the third game, which I just had on.
We also did Auto Age Standoff, a few years ago.
Yes. With kind of developing these games, and I guess this could be a good segue to talking about Triversal. That Triversal is a game, as you said, it's a more of a casual puzzle experience. And I guess, like, what attracted you to working on that? Because we've seen this kind of, I wouldn't say like a second Renaissance period of puzzle games, but we've been seeing like more developers like really go for like not so much hardcore puzzle games, but like very involved ones. Like for people listening to us, like probably the standout example would be like Baba Is You, which completely like broke my brain when I tried to play that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we didn't even aspire to do something so genius. I think we had a really interesting mechanic and managed to polish that up and turn it into a full game. I think for us, we were probably, if I remember where our heads were at the time, we have kind of an internal skunk works, like where we're just kind of throwing ideas together and prototyping things when we have some downtime and stuff like that. And we kind of developed this mechanic. It's got to be 2 years ago or something. And to work on a purely systems-based game definitely really appeals to some of the people in the studio. We're pretty easy to work on anything, but we had worked on, a super intensive, 16-player multiplayer car combat game with full physics simulation. It's like very complicated. And this game is chill and relaxing. The experience for the player is chill and relaxing, and the experience in developing it was chill and relaxing, which is actually great because the pandemic hit just as we started production. And we produced that puzzle game and Rollers of the Realm Reunion, which is the sequel to Rollers of the Realm. So we actually were concurrently developing 2 games in this studio, which was not easy. And we're still working on the sequel right now for Rollers of the Realm.
Great. Yeah, and like with the idea of a casual game, there's something I want to touch on for people listening to us right now. That a lot of people, I think, misconstrue what casual means. That it's going to be a very simple game. It's very easy to design. But one of the things that I've spoken to developers like George Fan, former of PopCap, that it's very hard to kind of square that circle of making a game that it's casual so that anyone can play it, but you also need to design it in a way that somebody can just like load this up and immediately get into it. So I was wondering if you could touch a little bit on kind of that challenge of making Triversal, like hitting that sweet spot.
Yeah, I think the invitation to play has to appeal right off the bat. Like if it doesn't look appealing, if there isn't a core mechanic that is almost immediately evident, it's going to already have lost a certain degree of the audience. So I guess when we go to expos and stuff, we call it curb appeal, when we're showing the game on the expo floor. And if we see people look at it from across the floor and come over and check it out. And I mean, we weren't able to go to physical shows for the last 18 months. We've seen it with some of our other games, but we know when a game has curb appeal. And I think we try to incorporate, the graphics are like super bright and neon, and we have different graphical styles. And the game board itself is very, very stylized and very, very simple, but kind of elegant in that. And I think that the mechanics surface very quickly. And I think that people understand very quickly how to play the game because the core is just based around this idea of triangulation. What is the center of this particular triangle? Given a lot of possibilities. It's just a very, very simple core mechanic. And then we add another level on there, depending on the game mode, with coin collection as part of the gameplay so that you're awarded more points if you collect coins. Collecting all the coins gets you extra amount of points. And then you're spending those coins to give yourself an advantage during gameplay, like buying hints or other power-ups. So, it's like... does it look appealing? Can I learn it in like 10 seconds? And then is it pleasurable to repeat that action a lot? And again, we didn't aspire to like genius puzzle levels. Like this is not a lotus flower of puzzle design where every layer elegantly peels off, revealing an ever more complex layer underneath it. It is pretty basic, but the design purpose behind it is for you to pick it up after work, pick it up on a subway ride, pick it up before you go to bed, and just spend, 10, 20, 40 minutes playing, put it down, come back to it another time. It's really like heavily session-based, snackable kind of a game. And the soundtrack's very soothing, and the experience is very soothing. I like to just leave it on in the background while I work, honestly, because our soundtrack is partially procedurally assembled, and so it's non-repeating, which is pretty cool.
Neat. And I think that's another very interesting point about the idea of the snackable or the almost session-based design, because this was one of the things I think we really saw kind of blow up with the rise of mobile over the last 10, 12 years, give or take. And I'm just wondering how much the market has really shifted either more towards that with more people trying to embrace casual games or further away, as we've seen, I think, at least from my own point of view, more mobile developers really go for these very meaty experiences, like Genshin Impact that was released last year, just being one of the more standard examples of, yes, it's a mobile game, but we're also trying to, compete with Breath of the Wild in terms of its gameplay.
Yeah, but I think you're not going to play those kinds of games, casually. You're not going to play them while you're on the subway. You're going to play a game like Triversal when you're on the subway, and so it's a different audience and intent, I guess. If you're going to sit down and play Fortnite or PUBG or something on mobile, it's probably because it's your primary device, and maybe you're sitting in your room, and you're just, the affordability of the portable device that you can just take it anywhere and do anything with. We all know the specs of mobile devices are getting better and better, and I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing AAA level titles on mobile. But I think the audience intention is it's like two different groups, and you can enjoy both, but if you want to spend the hour and a half playing something, you're going to play one of the more involved games. If you want to, there's always going to be mobile games for 5 or 10 minute experiences,
Yeah. And with like Triversal and going for being more of this kind of like casual design, like from a UI perspective for the developers listening to us, what was kind of the process of like iterating on the UI to make sure that it is one of those games that you can put in front of somebody within 3 to 5 seconds? They'll have the general idea down.
Yeah, I think keeping everything as simple as we could, but no simpler. It's this very it's like a fine line, right? You want things to look simple but not bad graphics, but then if you elaborate too much, it starts to distract from the simplicity of what you have in front of you. I would describe this style as minimalist. There's so many minimalist puzzle games out there. We're another minimalist puzzle game. I mean, I think we tried to pay special attention to shape language. It was important for us to have this game be fairly accessible. And so, we don't rely solely on color to communicate the different game pieces. Every piece has a distinct shape. At least that's the intention. And I think, again, like with the rest of the interface elements, just trying to keep things only to what you actually need to see, and usually not too much more than that. We also didn't go crazy with visual effects. There's some in there, but it's just not the kind of game where everything's popping off at you all the time. It doesn't even have as much game juice, I don't think, as something like Candy Crush, but it's chill. It's a chill game. So we're just trying to keep things that way, and I think everything feeds into that, from the design to the soundtrack, even the gameplay.
Now, one thing I wanted to touch on that I saw when I was playing the game, for those of you listening to us, probably about like a few weeks from when this cast goes up, but the idea of having like the pro mode and the kind of like the endless mode, you have to keep going every time you make a turn, it gets cost a coin. Where did like the concepts of trying to make things more challenging come from? Because as we were just saying about a minute ago, with making Triversal more on the casual side, so what was like the challenge, or what was the thought process of making things more challenging, or having that little extra bite to it?
Yeah, I think we definitely workshopped internally lots of different ways to play the game, and depending on this game was made available to Steam users at various times before its final release. We did do like a demo, and it was early on, and then we did tons of changes to the game, in part based on feedback from players, but also we already had a laundry list of stuff we wanted to change. And the game design itself kind of fluctuated a little bit, where we would add a bunch of things, strip a bunch of things away, put a few more things back, and then where we ended up, obviously, is the shipped game. I think we took aspects of play that we liked, but didn't want all of them together at once, and just siloed them into their own modes. So, the endurance mode is like kind of a survival gauntlet. How many levels can you complete before you run out of coins? That caters to a certain kind of player, whereas the daily puzzle challenge may, communicate better to a different kind of player. It's a different type of challenge. It's leaderboard based, so everybody gets the same, the same levels for that day. You can play them and then see how you stack up against other players. So I think we just tried to put in a few modes that may hit different facets of the same audience.
And you said earlier, obviously, Triversal is out on Steam. Is it available on mobile now, or is that coming?
Yeah, it's not on mobile yet. We do want to put it on mobile, but honestly, like, we are not experts at mobile publishing, and we can make good games, but we don't market the games very well. And we all know how hard it is to market successfully on mobile. So, there's always online events. GDC is this week. It's just wrapping up today at the time we're recording. And we're definitely on the hunt for a mobile publisher who can really help us cut through the noise. And so, if we're lucky, we'll get a good partner for that, or maybe somebody at Apple will take notice. It would be great to get a feature or something. At this point, we're looking only at iOS. We're not really looking at Android, although Android is definitely possible with the right partner. We just don't prefer it as a platform because there's so many variants of it. Bug fixes can be really challenging. And then a console release would be great as well. We do have the game running on Switch, and it feels real nice to tap that screen and play it on a portable device. So, we'll have announcements as time goes on about those two platforms.
It is very tricky. Like, we do a show every Thursday where we review indie game store pages to talk about like marketing advice and design the page and make it very attractive. And it is very hard for a lot of developers, especially if you don't have a strong marketing background, which I think a lot of like first-time indies certainly don't. And like, it is very much like you have just that one chance to get in front of somebody, and if anything annoys them or stops them, that's it. Like, they're just going to click off, or they may not even click on the page in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's where indies get themselves in trouble, and certainly we've been slightly bitten by that in doing unusual games. As I said way earlier, we don't really do stuff that you'd qualify as mainstream. So I think, you're already dealing with a fraction of the audience, depending on how weird your indie game is. You're already looking at a small subsection of an audience, and then it's gamers now can be so picky about the media they consume. And I mean, even Steam, when you are setting up your store page, Valve is now including some tips on how to set your store page up, and they're like, you got to get them in like 15 seconds. Stop putting your logo at the front of a trailer, just show them gameplay. And too, everybody's browsing stores these days. I mean, it does not take long for you as a consumer to look at what's there, and for better or worse, decide immediately if this is a game that you're going to like or not. So that's that's just the market now, and we can. What we're going to try to do in future releases is to make sure that we're not dealing with a subsection of an audience. We were hoping pinball and RPG are two markets we can put together. Certainly pinball is smaller than RPG, but sometimes, you can get a really nice peanut butter and chocolate combo.
Yep, for sure. So I know we are coming up on our time. We're just about at it. So very quickly, for people listening, what is the sequel to Rollers of the Realm? Is there anything you can tease or talk about that very fast?
Yeah, I sure can. So Rollers of the Realm Reunion carries on the story of the characters from Rollers of the Realm, which was published in 2014 on Steam and PS4 and Vita. The sequel will be coming out on the Steam Store and Epic Games Store. And it's kind of one of those situations where the characters think maybe they're going to hit retirement, but they get called back into action by a new threat to the realm. And the gameplay is a really unusual combo of traditional arcade pinball and action RPGs. It involves shooting your ball at enemies on screen. There's platforming, parkour. There's even stealth that we add with pinball play. And you can check it out on wishlist on Steam and Epic Games Store right now. So if the game seems interesting, just look it up on Steam or Epic and see what you think.
Right. Anything we didn't touch on with Triversal that you would like to bring up?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I like what we discussed. I mean, it was a good breakdown of some of the aspects of the game. I guess there's a free demo, so that's fun. If you want to sample it, you can play a puzzle every day. That's unique every day. 365 puzzles a year. You just don't get to put your name on the leaderboard, but it's free to download on Steam.
Right. And do you have anything you'd like to say to any fans watching or listening to us in the castle?
Well, if we have any fans, hi, thanks for your support. Super happy that you enjoy our games, and hopefully you'll enjoy Triversal if you haven't checked it out already. Triversal. You can find that on Steam, and Rollers of the Realm you can look up on Steam too. If you're interested in the sequel, if you've played the original, you'll love the sequel even better. So thanks.
All right. And very quickly, any social media you would like to plug, places people can find you, find your games, anything like that.
Yeah, sure. You can look up Phantom Compass on Steam. We're at Phantom Compass on Twitter, and we are at Phantom Compass on Facebook. And the Facebook, oh my God, not Facebook.com. We're at phantomcompass.com on the web. There you go. Thanks.
All right. Well, Tony, it has been a pleasure hanging out with you this afternoon. Best of luck with the sequel to Rulers of the Realm. That will be one I'll be looking forward to checking out. And I hope things go well with Triversal with the porting and getting it out for more people.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Been a pleasure.
Not a problem. And for those of you listening, be sure to check out those games. There'll be links to them in the description for those of you watching this on YouTube. As always, thank you so much for watching these shows. If you're a developer working on an upcoming game or teaching design, like to come on and talk about it, please get in touch. You can find links and information in the description down below to our Discord and Patreon. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my design books. There are, of course, links all over for that as well. So with that said, come back daily for discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Till next time, take care.